Hey, I'm here with Nick, and he is doing some cool policy legislation work that we're going to hear all about now. Introduce yourself, dude.
Thanks, mate. Yes, I'm Nick, and my day job, otherwise my boss will kill me, is a Secure Flag, Secure Coding Training. It's a platform that teaches developers how to code securely using live infrastructure. And then the other hat that I was talking about that I wear just before this conversation is we've set up a coalition that seeks to enhance legislation that protects ethical researchers performing vulnerability treatment. And when independent of but aligned with the OECD, the Organization for Economic Development Cooperation, which is the 28 member countries have established policy recommendations on vulnerability treatment. And we've got funding from Microsoft, Siemens, and a couple of other ones as well that are looking to improve how laws protect researchers that say, hey, I've got a bug, and instead of the company saying, screw you, here's a lawsuit, they say, okay, we embrace that and thank you very much for helping us. So that's the idea. Yeah.
So kind of extending like the freedoms you get by signing up to like HackerOne and having a specific, like, I'm only going to target this with these restrictions, like extending that into like legislation so it just covers like people trying against anything?
In part, bug bounties have been it's a positive step in that it gives individual hackers a voice and also a mechanism by which they can actually approach a large organization with all these sort of legal frameworks in place. And HackerOne says, we'll take care of that. We'll deal with the lawyers and the suits and everything on their side. And then you can even get some incentives, i.e., a bug bounty. But that's just one small solution which doesn't fix the problem globally at all. The problem needs to be fixed by policy. It needs to have regulations that actually determine, and we're talking bug bounty platforms aren't too popular in 150 odd countries. They're very popular in the United States, but there's already maturity in the understanding of why these types of mechanisms need to exist and why interfacing with the community needs to exist. There are many other countries in the world where those mechanisms don't exist, and the threat to researchers going about the business could be jail time or it could be execution even in some countries. So the idea is we're not going to fix the world by changing just US legislation. It needs to be an international governmental organization, like, for example, the United Nations, but they're a bit flaccid when it comes to this type of thing, which is why the OECD, which has a better track record, like in their terms of cryptography, it's something from 20 years ago, creation of policy around that, aligning with that kind of organization, which is then saying, here's soft law that our member countries want to implement, is a very smart move. And then we need to advocate that that's an important thing, speak with certs in different countries and emerging markets and say, hey, this is a really cool thing, speak with the policymakers. And then they say, actually, maybe we'll improve the way we work with our ethical researchers. Instead of saying, screw you, and then the ethical researcher says, I may not be so ethical now.
Yeah.
What's worse? I mean, do we want to disenfranchise them and make them, turn them more into the dark side, or do we want to embrace them and say, you may... The complexity also is, do we want to say that there's an incentive, a financial incentive attached to it? Because we need to make sure that that's very well phrased and not the primary motivation of an ethical researcher. Because otherwise then we're talking about almost a blackmail scenario where we have, okay, well,
right,
bug X and I will help you, but I need a bit of something.
And if not, I might go and give it to these non-ethical entities, and yeah.
This does not sit in the bona fide. It's not ethical. So understanding those intricacies and being able to label them clearly defined legislation, that's a challenge. Because also legislators and policymakers are not too au fait with these complexities. So maybe in the United States they're getting there, but there are 100 and other...
As we've seen recently with the whole like end-to-end encryption conversations around legislation.
Yes, and we're back to that conversation again. So we know how slow policymakers are to actually get it into their thick skulls. So that's the idea.
Very, very cool. Oh, it sounds like good work. We just had a story like 30 minutes ago with a guy saying one of our founders found security issues with pacemakers, case in point to what you're trying to do. And he was like, he had two options. It was like federal prison, or do you hire the guy that broke it? And luckily they hired the guy, but the other option was federal prison. So yeah.
And it's a common thing, right? Many people who got their first entrance into the industry was 16 years old. They're a bit dumb. Maybe they broke something that certainly wouldn't be considered totally legal, but they're on the right path, generally speaking, and they Yeah, there's so many instances like that, and a lot of greys as well. So, yeah.
I feel like you saw me in that statement there, but yes. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.